everyone. I'm currently doing a PhD in Media and Cultural Studies, and hopefully I'm on my final year, and that's what I'd like to believe. And and so the broad area that I'm looking at is the use of community media for social change. These are the areas that I'll cover in my presentation. And it's more or less to give you an insight of it's partially of my research journey, but also an insight into the area that I'm studying because it's fairly a new area and it's still emerging. The program, particularly that I'm looking at, or the case that I'm looking at, is one that's based in my home country, which is Trinidad and Tobago. And so the YMCA came up with this program called Shoot to Live to sort of lure in the people that shoot to kill. And the whole point of it was to look to address the issues faced by at-risk youth through life skills, giving them a combination of life skills, photography, and videography. And in the hopes that they would develop some level of skill and be able to have the competence to become employed, be able to engage with the general public and so forth. But that was the general aim, and they had certain objectives within this program. So I'm using this program as a case for my study. And the theoretical backbone of my research falls within the area of community media, looking at the definitions that emerged from as early as 1988 to present. Also the motivations why did community media emerge. One of the reasons would be to sort of, advocate against the negatives that the mainstream media put forward. So things like that I'm sort of unearthing and putting together and then putting my thoughts into it. I also look at how internet has changed this particular paradigm, because the biggest question is whether there is relevance for community media, because when you think of the word community, it initially referred to a specific geographical space. And so is there relevance for terms like that? That's how new technologies and paradigm shift has impacted this field thus far. So I'm also sort of, unearthing those type of debates in my literature review. And of course, because the research focuses on at-risk youth, I look at literature on youth, looking at youth as culture, youth as a transitional group, and sort of looking at those debates and looking at how theorists have put forward certain frameworks for youth programs and how they should be structured when you are using them for development purposes. And I also look at the role of communication in all of this. Just to give you an insight of something, a definition as to what community media is, it refers to media by communities, for communities, is sort of the voice for the voice. It gives voice to the voiceless. It serves social groups, civil society organizations, and so forth. And one of the misconceptions is that community media is specifically broadcast media, but in this case, as you can see, the Shoot to Live Shoot to Live community media program was a non-broadcast program. So it falls into different categories and it could be used for various purposes, anything that a community or any group decides to use it for. That's essentially the idea. And youth in this particular research would refer to people within the ages of 12 to 29. So it's more or less looking at youth as a transition from teen to adulthood. That's the essential idea and core definitions that I'm using to guide my study. And because I wanted to sort of look at areas that haven't been really tapped into as yet because the field is emerging. One of the things that the program promises is to show you how it impacts on the lives of these young people. But the question is, how do you really measure impact? How do you assess it? And I'm teasing out those sort of areas in my research. I want to see how they measured it, and so I'm using documents, physical artifacts like photos and short films, and also any other outputs that came out of the program. I interviewed persons as well, and I did some focus groups with the participants. So those are some of the methods that I'm using to unpack this particular research method. I also want to use the findings, the overall findings of my study, to outline how it affects community media programs going forward, and also now, and also how it impacts on youth development models, youth development approaches, youth development policies as well. And I'm using documents and interviews and so forth for this to meet this particular objective. And in the end, I have this ideal ambition. I don't know if I'm actually going to achieve this, but I want to be able to propose some broader framework under which community media programs such as these can operate. And of course, you can tweak as you go along. But also, I want to be able to develop a toolkit that that looks at particularly assessing impact in within these programs, because that doesn't exist. And so I'll pull together, I'm attempting to pull together the theoretical contributions from the literature review that I did, as well as from the findings of this study. And just to give you a sort of flavor of the outputs, these are some of the pictures taken by participants. And when I say at-risk areas, these are really vulnerable young people. And it strikes me that they have certain mannerisms and certain capabilities already built into them. Not sure if it's associated with the program, if it was a direct result of the program. Like, for instance, this picture that's titled Beatum Reflection, which the participants give the title themselves to the photos. So this picture, it's literally a reflection with water, but in essence, it also reflects the daily lives that these communities experience. This is a flood-prone area that has been neglected for years by the government of Trinidad and Tobago. So it's a plight in essence as to this is what we face. These are our constraints. And I don't know if you can see at the top of the image, there's like it's a dilapidated house. It's made out of we call it galvanized aluminum material, and that's what people reside in. So the pictures in essence are being used to bring about that sort of political civic competencies for them to be able to put their thoughts forward, for them to be able to bring this to the attention of the government. But whether or not it was an outcome of the program, that's a big question. So I'm looking at things of that nature. And these are other pictures as well that the participants took. And so I used the grounded theory method to come up with these emergent themes. And when I say grounded theory, I'm hoping in the end that I can a theory would emerge out of this particular thematic approach that I took. And these are sort of the broad themes that came out of my analysis when I looked at all of the data compiled together. And there's some really, really key issues and important issues that are relevant not only for this area, but for the community media framework. And so I essentially, this is not in any particular order, but this is where I'm at the moment. I bulked everything into sort of categories, and I'm still sort of finding my way through the data analysis at the moment. And it looks at motivations, why participants were so inclined to join the program, what were the incentives, what are the different communities involved, because there's so many different facets that come together to make this program happen. So there's so many broader questions as to, this community these communities, because it wasn't two communities, it was geographically defined. So it answers the question as to whether community media still has a place. But there's so many communities that also came and interlinked with this program. For instance, the church, the community groups, the funding agencies, the government agencies, the NGOs, and these are all subcategories, and they all connect, and they all have an interest in this program. So I'm just trying to figure out how these how this actually related to the program, bring out the broader questions as to the relevance of each, whether participants had access, participation, and in the end to see whether or not it fits within what theorists have said over the years about community media. does it have a place? Should we change the name? Should we present something else for this area? And if so, where we're at now. And as I said, I'm still doing this at the moment. So this is all I can offer on my particular research, and I'm hoping in the end, to conclude, I would be able to put forward something to help community media organizations assess whether or not their programs are actually effective and successful within these groups and can result in some sort of meaningful transformation. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Lection. Are there any questions?
What made you choose grounded theory as an approach?
Wow, it was quite difficult because I thought from the get-go it was not going to match. It just wasn't going to work. I tried to fit my research into so many other areas, into so many other analysis methods, and they just wouldn't work. So in the end, because I already started to code the information, and the things that I imagined myself doing quite naturally, when I read up on it, it kind of matched. It was the most suitable analysis method to analyze the data. So I think I don't even think it's a complete match, to be honest, because there are still ways where I deviated from the research, from the method, but it's the closest one, to be honest.